You've been praying. You've been waiting. And somewhere deep down, you started to wonder if God even hears you anymore. But what if the problem isn't that it's gone silent? What if the problem is that you've been listening for the wrong thing? Most people are waiting for a loud, undeniable moment, a burning bush, a voice from the sky. But God hasn't stopped speaking. You've just been trained to miss it. And every day you don't recognize his voice, you're walking past the very answers you've been begging for. Watch this video till the end. Subscribe and like, because what comes next might change everything. You didn't see it coming. Nobody does. One day everything made sense. You had a plan, a direction, a version of your life that felt solid. And then something shifted. A door closed that you were certain was yours. A relationship ended that you thought was permanent. A path you've been walking suddenly disappeared beneath your feet. And you've been standing in that rubble ever since, trying to make sense of what went wrong. You've replayed it, over and over, searching for the moment you made the mistake, wondering if you said the wrong thing, chose the wrong direction, trusted the wrong person. You've carried the weight of that collapse like it was your fault, like if you had just been smarter, more careful, more aware, none of it would have fallen apart. But here's what nobody told you about disruption. It doesn't always look like destruction. Sometimes it looks exactly like loss, like delay, like the thing you wanted most being pulled out of your hands at the worst possible moment. And from where you're standing, in the middle of it, it feels like punishment. It feels personal, like something is working against you. What you couldn't see then, and what's hard to see even now, is that not every closed door is a rejection. Some doors close because what's behind them was never meant to be your destination. Some relationships end because they were quietly keeping you from becoming who you actually are. Some plans collapsed not because you failed, but because you were being redirected towards something your current vision wasn't big enough to hold. The disruption you've been grieving wasn't the end of your story. It was a story changing direction. What broke wasn't your future. What broke was a version of your future that was too small for where you're actually being taken. There's something happening inside you that you haven't told anyone about. Not because you're hiding it, but because you don't have the words for it yet. It's not sadness. It's not anxiety. It's heavier than restlessness and quieter than fear. It shows up when the noise dies down, when the phone is put away, when the room goes still, when there's nothing left to distract you from yourself. And in that silence, you feel it. This pull, this ache, like something is trying to get your attention from the inside out. You've tried to shake it. You've filled the space with noise, with busyness, with people, with anything that keeps you from sitting alone with that feeling. Because when you do sit with it, it asks questions you don't know how to answer. It points towards something you can't fully see yet. And that terrifies you more than the ache itself. But that pull you've been running from, that unnamed weight in your chest, that's not a breakdown. That's not burnout. That's not your mind unraveling. That's your deeper self trying to wake you up. Something in you is being called towards something greater than where you currently are, not with a shout, but with a persistent, quiet, undeniable tug. The kind that doesn't go away no matter how much noise you pile on top of it. The ache isn't the problem. The ache is the invitation. And the fact that you can't ignore it anymore means you were never meant to. Speech balloon, drop a comment right now if you've ever felt this pull but couldn't explain it. You're not alone in this. You've been reaching out into what feels like an empty space. And the hardest part isn't the waiting, it's the silence that follows. That specific, hollow quiet where an answer should be. You've done everything right. You've reflected. You've asked. You've tried to be still, tried to be patient, tried to trust a process you can't see moving. And yet, nothing. No confirmation. No sense of peace. No sign that any of it is landing anywhere. Just you, alone with your own thoughts echoing back at you, wondering if anything is actually listening. And slowly, quietly, a thought has started forming that you don't want to admit out loud. That maybe you did something wrong. That maybe you pushed too hard, asked for too much, or waited too long. That maybe the silence means you've been left behind, or worse, that you were never on the right path to begin with. That thought is a lie, and it's the most convincing lie silence tells. Because silence has never meant absence. The most significant breakthroughs in a person's life are almost always preceded by a period of stillness. Before clarity comes confusion. Before movement comes stillness. That's not a coincidence. That's how deep change works. The silence you're sitting in right now isn't the universe pulling away from you. It's the kind of quiet that only exists when something important is being prepared, when the answer being built for you is too significant to be delivered in a hurry. You weren't abandoned in the silence. You were being prepared inside it. Something has gone quiet inside you that used to be loud. And you don't know when it happened, only that it did. The things that used to light you up just don't anymore. The friendships that once felt life-giving now feel like performances you're tired of rehearsing. The goals you sacrificed for, the habits you built, the version of your life you worked so hard to construct, you look at all of it and feel nothing. Not hatred, not regret, just a hollow, unsettling emptiness where passion used to live. And that scares you more than you've admitted. Because if the things that once defined you no longer move you, then who are you without them? You've tried to force it back. You've shown up, smiled, pushed through, told yourself it's just a phase. But your heart keeps refusing to follow. And the more you try to revive what's fading, the more exhausted you become. This isn't you losing yourself. This isn't ingratitude or weakness or a sign that something is broken in you. This is your inner self clearing the old to make space for what's next. Psychologists call it a value shift, when who you're becoming no longer fits the life you've been living. It's not emptiness. It's evolution. And you can't step into what's ahead while your hands are still full of what's already done. The emptiness you're feeling isn't a void. It's preparation. And you can't be filled with what's coming until you've been emptied of what's done. There's something that keeps finding you, and you keep putting it down. You know exactly what it is. That thought that surfaces when you're alone. That vision that appears in the quiet moments you can't fully distract yourself from. You've pushed it aside more times than you can count. Told yourself it's unrealistic. Told yourself it's just your mind wandering. Told yourself that people like you don't get to want things that big. But it keeps coming back. And that's what unsettles you most. Not the dream itself, but the fact that you can't seem to kill it no matter how many times you try. You've been calling it imagination. But imagination fades. This hasn't. Research in psychology shows that recurring thoughts and visions are rarely random. They're your subconscious pointing towards something your conscious mind is afraid to pursue. What won't leave you isn't restlessness. It's a signal that was placed in you before you were equipped to act on it. The thoughts you keep dismissing isn't noise. It's the most persistent signal in your life for a reason. And every time you push it away, you're not being realistic. You're being avoidant to the very thing you were built to pursue. You've heard it before, more than once, from more than one person. And every time, you nodded, maybe even felt something shift briefly inside you. And then you moved on. You filed it away under coincidence, under interesting timing, under anything that didn't require you to take it seriously. Because if you took it seriously, you'd have to do something about it. And you're not sure you're ready for that yet. But think about it honestly. The friend who said something offhand that landed heavier than it should have. The conversation that addressed the exact thing you've been carrying in private. The stranger whose words stopped you mid-conversation because they had no way of knowing, and yet somehow they knew. Different people, different moments, different contexts. Same message finding you every single time. You been calling that coincidence. But coincidence doesn't repeat itself with that kind of precision. When the same truth keeps finding you through different voices, that's not the world talking randomly. That's a pattern. And patterns in your life are never meaningless. They are signals your awareness hasn't caught up to yet. The repetition you've been brushing off isn't random noise. It's the same conversation being continued across different mouths. The message isn't new. It's been saying the same thing all along, waiting for you to finally stop long enough to receive it. Every moment you were certain you were falling behind, every season you spent convinced you were forgotten, every night you lay awake wondering why nothing was moving. Look at all of it now from where you're standing. The door that closed and broke you for months led directly to the one that changed everything. The silence you mistook for stagnation was the exact period when the most important things were being rearranged on your behalf. The disruption you called a setback was a precise moment your direction was being corrected. You weren't lost. You were in transition. And transition never feels like progress from the inside. You spent so long feeling invisible, like everyone else was moving forward while you were standing still. You carried that feeling like evidence, like proof that you'd been forgotten or passed over or left to figure it out alone. But here's what's true. Every sign you missed, every pull you couldn't explain, every voice that kept saying the same thing. It was never random. It was never noise. It was the same message, spoken in different ways, across different seasons, waiting for you to be still enough to finally receive it. You were never off course. You were being shaped for a destination you couldn't see yet. And now that you can see it, even slightly, the only question left is what you're going to do with that clarity. The signals were never missing. You were just becoming ready to notice them. Speech balloon if this spoke to something you've been carrying in silence. Type "I'm ready" in the comments. Someone else needs to see that too. Maybe all the silence, the shifts, the setbacks, maybe they were never random. Maybe life has been speaking this whole time, through every disruption, every pull, every persistent dream, every repeated message from different mouths. The question was never whether the signals were there. The real question is, now that you finally see them, what will you do? Speech balloon if this hits something deep. Drop "I'm ready" in the comments. And don't keep this to yourself. Someone else needs to hear this today. Thumbs up sign like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to wake up to the signs around them.